Hey guys, we have here the 24 volt 100 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery from SOK. So we're going to give this the usual test procedures. We'll do the capacity test and a teardown and show you how it's built. However, I fully expect this battery to be very similar, if not identical, to the 12 volt batteries we reviewed previously. Of course, with the exception of being 8 cells instead of 4. So this will likely be a fairly quick video. So this battery measures in at 19.5 inches in width, including the handles on the side, 8.5 inches in height, including the terminals, and 7 3/4 inches in depth. And it weighs in at 54.5 pounds. On the front we can see some quick specifications. Again, 25.6 volts nominal, 100 amp hours. We've got a recommended charge voltage of 29.4 volts, and that comes out to 3.67 volts per cell. So I suppose that allows a little bit room for balancing at the top end. We have a recommended charge current of 50 amps and a recommended discharge current of 100 amps. Looking at the terminals, we have these rubber insulators. We've got a nice sized M8 bolt. You can fit a lot of lugs on this bolt. This is quite a bit longer than some of the other batteries we reviewed. And we have the same screwed down terminal as we've seen before, with a rubber washer underneath. On the sides, we have two handles that fold out for easy carrying. One thing I noted with the last video is some people said these handles were installed upside down on the must start battery. And it's interesting because I see they're installed in the same orientation on the SOK battery. And what happens when it's installed in this orientation is that as you pick this up, it pinches your fingers between the handle and the battery. So I'm not sure if this is actually upside down or not. That is something I do want to ask them. So once I have a response on that, I will leave that in the comment section down below. So all in all, this battery is pretty much identical to the 100 amp hour. The only difference is being obviously that it has more cells and that the larger battery has handles on the side, whereas the 100 amp hour battery has a handle on the top. I've really gotten to love this charger. It does both 12 and 24 volts, makes it very easy to switch between different battery voltages for different kinds of tests. Alright, seems like the battery is fully charged. Alright, so you can see I've got my standard capacity test set up here, where the wires are coming out of the battery into the Batrium shunt, and we got a fuse over there. Then I'm going to plug this into my MPP solar. This is an LV2424-MSD inverter. You can see I've been working on getting some space set up here in the garage where I can test inverters and do more of that sort of thing. I purchased this quite a while ago when I did the hand truck video. It's a great inverter. And then on the output side of that, you'll see I have some temporary wiring. Again, this is only temporary for the purposes of this test. I'm going to get this wired correctly with breakers and whatnot eventually. But that's coming down here and going to this space heater. This space heater will put approximately 980 watts on the battery, which should be about a 0.4 C rate. We're going to do a slightly quicker test than we've done before. Simply because this battery is very similar, pretty much exact to the 12 volt battery, just in a 24 volt form. And we already know how it performs at 0.2 C, so we'll see how it performs at a slightly faster C rate today. And just as a quick reminder, this display is showing voltage, amperage, wattage, discharged amp hours, and discharged watt hours. Let's go ahead and turn our inverter on. Takes a minute to start up before the AC output turns on. Alright, so you can see we're leveling out around 985 watts, and it's currently sitting just under 40 amps. Alright, well we've hit 101 amp hours here, and I see there's a low battery voltage warning fault code blinking on the inverter, so I'm not sure how much longer this inverter is going to run for. Alright, so the inverter shut down before the battery BMS did, unfortunately. Tested capacity is 102.2 amp hours. Unfortunately, I don't really have a good way of discharging the remaining amp hour or two of capacity this battery is still storing. Maybe what I'll try doing is plugging in a few light bulbs, which will pull less current than the space heater, and see if we can squeeze a few more amp hours out of it, but that's pretty much the end. Like I said, we're at 102.25 amp hours out of 100 amp hours, so that is fantastic. I expect nothing less from an SOK battery. So yeah, let's just see what happens if I switch this guy off and then switch it back on. Wow, bright lights. And we're pulling 20 amps, so we'll just leave this run until... Alright, so the inverter has once again shut down. We're at 105 amp hours on this battery. Alright, so here's the resulting discharge graph from this test, and it does look a little bit funny due to the fact that we started the test over with a lower current after the first test. So that can be seen between minutes 150 to 165. Additionally, one interesting thing I noted is look how the current line goes up at a nice smooth increase. It's not like we saw on that cheaper Best Tech inverter where it bounces all over the place. So perhaps that's a difference of the pure sine versus the modified sine inverter. So all in all, this test took 164 minutes and the average discharge current was 38.25 amps. One thing I like about these batteries is how easy they are to open. You simply have to remove these Phillips screws around the top of the lid and the whole thing just pops right off. Oh, look at that! And I could actually feel some heat in here from the discharge test. It doesn't feel anything like what I consider a concern, but it is just noticeably warm if I stick my hand in there. So this is built pretty much exactly the same as the 12 volt as we expected. We simply have 8 cells here instead of 12. The main positive connection is a pair of 7 gauge silicone insulated wiring, 200 degrees Celsius insulation rating. They are bolted down to the top of the cell and then bolted down to the lug at the top over here. The main negative is done the same way. We have a pair of 7 gauge wires bolted down to the cell, and then they go up to 2 separate screw pads on the BMS. Those 2 leads then exit the BMS in the same size wiring and go over to the main negative post of the battery. Taking a look at the balance connections here, we have individual wires going to ring terminals. They appear to be soldered on with heat shrink, and these ring terminals are under the same bolt which holds down to the battery post. Alright, and those wires all come up to some very nice spiral wrap here, protecting them down the center. And we have 2 connectors here. We have a 5-pin, and then we have a 4-pin. And then they just plug into the BMS here on the right side. I had to remove both of those to take the lid off simply because it was pulling on this wire. But additionally on this BMS we have 1 temperature sensor lead which comes off. And that temperature sensor comes down here and it is screwed into the top of the metal support bracket for these cells. So let's go ahead and see if we can pull some of these cells out. I see 2 Phillips screws on this end and then 2 Phillips screws on this end holding this top bracket into place. Alright, this makes me very nervous here because while this is powder coated, I don't want this to touch any side of these terminals here. So I gotta just slide it out very carefully. I suppose the better way to do this would be to disconnect the leads first. Taking a look at our cells here, these are all GFB 100 amp hour cells. GFB is Gangfeng, I believe the brand name is. They all have their original QR codes intact. I know it's difficult to see because of the light reflection, but they're all there. I don't see any corrosion or anything on the vents. That's something I've been checking recently just to show quality of the cells. Let's go ahead and see if we can get one pulled out here. Alright, this is actually a bit more difficult than I thought because they have a second bar here going over the lip of the cell, and you can see there's some insulation here. And I see a series of 3 Phillips screws holding this bar down. So I'm going to see if I can pull this out, but I really don't want to tear this apart too much, so. There we go. Got it. They're quite a bit smaller than I thought. Look at that. There's not really too much to see here. We can see they have some neoprene foam going across the top and the bottom. That's interesting because that's the exact same way I had settled on building my battery packs. Pretty much the exact same way. So it's good to see somebody else is doing that because that tells me I made a pretty good choice, especially since this is pretty much one of the top battery choices right now. Battery is perfectly flat. There is absolutely no bloating or anything like that. So this is a brand new grade A cell. And looking down in the case here, we can see how they have foam padding on all sides, which is why it was so difficult for me to remove. Alright, so these bus bars do have a pretty good amount of mass to them. They are solid bars. I did file down one end. I don't believe it's pure copper. I forget what they told me what this was. I had asked them once before when I reviewed the 12 volt battery. I think it was some kind of nickel copper clad or something like that. And then the hardware is always fun to look at too. We have serrated flange bolts. The longer bolt is for the positive end where the 2 lugs were connected, and the shorter bolt is for where the bus bar connections were made. Alright, so the last thing to test here is the low temperature charge protection. You can see we're charging at approximately 28 amps right now. Just going to dip this sensor into some frozen water. And there we go, it's shut down. Alright, so there we go. The SOK 24V 100Ah lithium iron phosphate battery. I do always go into these reviews unbiased, however I did know this one was going to stand up to the claims it makes. SOK has not failed us yet. So SOK has informed me that they have approximately 400 of these built and ready to ship already. I'm going to leave a link down in the description below to 2 places where you can purchase them. If you purchase them from SOK, they come with a 7-year warranty. If you purchase them from their partner and US distributor Current Connected, Current Connected has added an additional 3 years onto that warranty. So this battery will come with a 10-year warranty. Current Connected is also the only authorized repair center for these batteries in the United States. So if you have a problem, they're able to replace cells, replace BMSs, things like that to get your battery working again. I've also heard from 3 different vendors now that the price of lithium batteries is going to be going up very soon due to lithium shortage or something like that. So SOK is trying to procure a large amount of their GFB batteries ahead of time. As you may already know, they are working on developing a 48-volt server rack battery in conjunction with Current Connected as well. So hopefully that battery will be coming out very soon. I am super excited about that battery. I will have a full testing, review, and teardown of that in the coming months. So once I finish this video, I'm going to go purchase a second one of these 24-volt batteries for myself. I'll wire them in series for 48 volts and put it out my battery shed in conjunction with my EVE battery bank. So 2 of these batteries in series is approximately 5 kilowatt hours. So please hit that like button before you go. Any questions or comments, you can leave those in the comment section as well. Otherwise, thanks for watching.